Well, good evening. It's wonderful to be here in Bournemouth today and speak to such a big crowd. I won't waste much time now with an introduction. We'll start right away. And we're going to have a little interview first from this friend I made today already.
Well, firstly, I'd like to say thank you very much again for coming and welcoming you very warmly to sunny Bournemouth. It is always a privilege and an honor to hear from Holocaust survivors who are the first-hand direct witnesses of this uniquely evil destruction of 6 million Jews and many other innocent, helpless people. And as the stepsister of Anne Frank, who is one of the most known Jewish survivor of the Holocaust, you are in a unique position to tell us your story with a platform to educate and share your experiences. And people I know are very eager and curious to hear from someone with direct link to Anne Frank, and I'm sure you will tell us a bit about her.
Sure. I know everybody wants to hear about this.
Yeah. So just really to say, please tell us your story. I will then ask you a few questions, and time permitting, I will read out some of the questions that we've taken earlier from members of the audience.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. It's a long story. You all got a book, or you will get a book, and but of course I won't tell everything, and so it was a short life which I had, but there's a lot to talk about. Well, I was born in Vienna, in Austria, which was a beautiful country. I had grandparents, parents, aunts, uncles, and our family had lived in Austria since generation, and we were of course a Jewish family, but it didn't really matter. We mixed with everybody. There was no prejudice, no open prejudice. In the First World War, the Kaiser, Franz Joseph, was very, very popular, and he protected the Jewish people. He realized those were people who brought a lot of culture to Vienna. So everybody from the surrounding countries who all belonged to Austria came to Vienna, so there was a vibrant intellectual life with art and music and plays and science. And my parents were a young couple. My mother was 18 when she married, my father 21. I had an older brother, and we were really, really very attached to Austria and to the whole surrounding. And so all this collapsed suddenly when Hitler's army in 1938, uninvited, marched into Austria. In Germany, of course, it had already started the persecution of Jewish people, so I think my parents knew what to expect. But you know, parents tried to protect the children, so for us it came actually quite unexpected. Our best friends, Christian people, stood in the street with swastika flags. Suddenly everybody had swastika flag waving, and with a Heil Hitler salute. And we just looked out of our windows and were very, very scared. What on earth has happened? My best friend was actually a Catholic girl, and after school usually I passed there because it was before I got home. And but after the next day, after the Nazis had marched in, when I got to her house, her mother, she looked already very, very cross at me, and then she said, "We never want to see you here again," and she slammed the door in my face. I went home crying. I said to my mother, "I don't understand, we didn't have a quarrel." And my mother said, "Well, for Jewish people, things are going to be very, very hard from now on." My brother came home, and he looked terrible. His clothes were torn, he was bleeding from all over his face, with a blue eye, and when my parents questioned him, he said, my own friends did that, and the teachers just watched it happening. You can imagine how scary it has become. My father, who was a was a businessman, but as well very clever, he had foreseen, and he had inherited from his father a shoe factory, and he had done business with Holland. They had as well a big shoe industry in the south of Holland. And he said, I'm going to leave immediately before the borders are closed or something happens, and I'm going to find accommodation for you, and you will follow. So he left, and but by the time my mother and grandparents and other people tried to get visas, it was already very difficult. And that was really the whole problem of the Holocaust, that it wasn't just Germany and Austria. The whole world didn't really care. And by 1938, 1939, it was already very difficult to get an exit visa and an entry visa into different free countries. You might have heard the story of America, of the ship, the St. Louis, who went from Hamburg with 2,000 Jewish people, and it went to Cuba actually, and the Cubans didn't want them, and then the German crew said, well, we'll get you into America, and the Americans warned the ship, if you come in our waters, we're going to sink you. And he tried for several weeks to get the people anywhere in the Americas, and nobody wanted them. The ship had to return to Hamburg, and most of the people, of course, perished. So this was really not only the fault of Germany, but really the whole world. So eventually we heard that we could go illegally as refugees to Belgium, which we did. We got into Brussels. I was 10 years old at the time. I had no idea of the language, couldn't speak French. And I was put in the back of the class, and the teacher just gave me papers and things. I didn't know what to do with it. The next day or a few days later, there was a dictation, and she said I should write. Well, you can imagine what I wrote. It's just complete nonsense. And the next day, the teacher brought my work back. Every word was crossed out in red, and she explained to the class that I was very stupid. So, you know, I was a very vibrant, happy child, but then I became depressed, miserable. I missed my family, my grandparents, and my aunts and uncles and children. And, you know, it was really very hard to be a refugee. And but eventually children adapt, they learn the language, and we lived in a little boarding house. We had 2 rooms, one for my mother and when my father came visiting over the weekend. The other room was for my brother and me, and we took our meals together with all the people, and my mother had no household, so very poorly, you know, it was really very miserable. And but, you know, I learned the language, and it was my 11th birthday, and I asked the landlady if I could have a little birthday party. In Vienna I had always lovely parties, and she said, yes, you can invite 5, 6 little girls. And I was excited. I gave an invitation to those children, and on the day of my birthday, they all brought a note from their parents that they're not allowed to come to my party. Again, I went home crying. I said to my mother, I don't understand, why couldn't they come? And my mother said, well, they just don't want to mix with Jewish refugees. So you can imagine life was really very hard. But in the meantime, Hitler had gone into Czechoslovakia, and he went into Poland, and the Second World War started. Well, we were still living in 2 different countries, and my father tried very hard to get a visa for us to come to Holland. Eventually, in February 1940, during the war, he got a visa for us for 3 months to come and visit him. Well, we had of course no furniture, nothing, we couldn't bring anything out, so he took a furnished apartment on the Merwedeplein. That is in modern, in Amsterdam, was a new area, and was a little apartment, but modern, very nice, and it had belonged to a Jewish lady whose son lived in Switzerland, and she had left, and so it belonged to a Christian woman, had bought it, and she was looking for a tenant. So my father rented it. That's very important. And we got there, and it was a lovely apartment. There was a big piano there, and we had, well, it was very nice, you know, we had our own apartment again. My mother could cook again, we could have our meals, and we were together as a family. That was, of course, the most important. My father went to work in the south of Holland and came back, not every day, but quite often, and I went to school. But if you live in an apartment, there were no gardens for children to play. So Merwedeplein means Merwede Square, so it was a big open space in the middle, and all the children from this neighborhood came after school out to play there. And one day, a little girl came to me, introduced herself, very well brought up, said, "My name is Anne Frank, and I come from Germany as well." She couldn't actually speak Dutch anymore. The Frank family from Frankfurt, big German town, left actually in '33 when Hitler came to power. And Otto Frank, who later became my stepfather, always told us when he saw the Nazis going through the street singing a very famous Nazi song, "When Jewish blood drips from our knives, things are going to get better." He realized this is not a country where he wants to bring up his family. So they left. And in '33, it was still fairly easy to get out of the country. And as Holland has been not in the war, in the first war, they thought it was a safe country. And quite a lot of German Jews did go to, in the early days, still to Holland. So Anne, when she realized I didn't speak really Dutch, and then this is, you know, Belgium is a two-language country, Flemish and French. And Flemish is similar to Dutch, not quite the same, but I could understand a little bit, so I was not completely lost in Holland. And I got a bicycle like everybody, and I was really quite happy. But Anne realized that she couldn't really talk properly to me, so she said, "I'll take you to my apartment." And so I met Otto Frank, her father, her mother, and her older sister, and we became friends. But I, through my experience, had become already a bit shy, had lost my, you know, my jolliness of life. You know, it was so difficult in all those different countries with meeting different people. So I was happier in Holland. But nevertheless, I admired Anne because she was very outgoing. She had not experienced any anti-Semitism. She went to a Dutch school and spoke Dutch perfectly. And she was a big chatterbox. Her nickname was Mrs. Quack Quack. She very often had to stay behind in school and write 100 lines. I don't know you do this now anymore, but at the time you had to stay behind and write, "I'm not going to talk so much in class," but she couldn't help it. The next week it happened again, and she stayed behind again. And she was, we were both 11 years old. I'm just 1 month older than her, and she was already very interested in boys. And when I told her I have an older brother, she said, "Oh, when can I come to your apartment?" And my mother wasn't interested in a little girl the age of his own sister. But Anne, when you read the diary, was already interested in boys, had already several boyfriends, and for me, boys came in and out the house. There was no mystery about that. So, and you know, after school we did skipping and hopscotch and gossiping a little bit. And so life looked really good again. I went to school, I made friends there, and so yeah, it was going to be okay. And but it lasted not very long, because in May, so just when we were actually supposed to go back to Belgium, at night one day we heard lots of noise, and we saw lights going up everywhere, and we put on the radio, and the announcer said, terrible news, the Germans are trying to invade our country, trying. And but you know, because in the First World War, as I said, Holland was not in the war, it's below sea level, in the flooded part of the country, so the Germans couldn't come in, and they just bypassed it and went to Belgium instead. But warfare had changed. There were aeroplanes. So they landed thousands of parachute people behind the watered country, and as well, that was the first time in this war that a civilian city had been bombed, Rotterdam, with 10,000 victims. And the Germans gave the warning, if you're not going to capitulate, we are going to bomb all your cities. Besides that, the Dutch royal family had fled, first to England, later they went to Canada. So that wasn't very encouraging, as you can imagine. They felt sort of abandoned by their royal. And so within 5 days, they gave up, and the Germans marched in. Well, nothing much happened in the beginning. But you know, this was a time you had to make choices. Like after Holland, the Nazis, the German army, went into Belgium. And the Belgian king cooperated with the Nazis. And after the war, he had to abdicate because he was considered a traitor. So, you know, every choice was a bad choice. So, in the first few weeks, nothing happened actually. Life carried on how it used to be. And we thought, oh well, perhaps they are not doing this to occupied countries, perhaps just Germany and Austria. But they just took a little bit their time. They didn't want to make enemies of the Dutch population. So slowly, the measures against the Jewish people started to come up. And it was not life-threatening, but more of a nuisance. For instance, we were not allowed to go on public transport. Didn't matter, we all had the bicycles. Then we had to hang in our radio. We were not allowed to go out before 7 o'clock in the morning and be home again at 8 o'clock. Well, we made it very cozy at home. We were 4 people. My father taught us bridge. We got Monopoly, which was just a new game coming out. So we made it very jolly in the evening. We got together, we told stories. My brother was a very wonderful musician. He played music on his piano, very talented. He was by that time 15 or 16. He could play the Rhapsody in Blue for Gershwin by heart. So we really make the most of it. But things became more and more difficult. Then we had to wear the yellow star, which means that people started to disappear. Very often, my brother came home from school and said his friend didn't come to school, and when he went to ask, the parents said, he's been arrested, we don't know what happened to him. So you can imagine it became very scary. Especially young men were just disappearing. Then we had to leave our schools. Well, there were good Jewish schools, so at first we thought it doesn't matter. But what happened there, the Nazis came with trucks, went into several classrooms, told the children to go down on the truck, and in the evening the parents waited for the children to come home, and they didn't turn up. They went to the local police, tried to find out the children are not home, where are they? didn't get any information. They went even to the Nazi police. Again, they were just sent home, and no information. So those children were never ever seen again. Only after the war did one hear that they were sent to Mauthausen. Have you heard of this camp? A terrible camp in Austria, where there were stone quarries, and they were just thrown down from the cliffs. Luckily, we didn't know this at the time, but nevertheless the children were not coming back. So it was really very scary to go to school. It was dangerous. To go out shopping was dangerous. To be at home it was dangerous, because there came some help knocking on the door and took away the man. So it was really, really very bad. After 2 years, so 1 year living in fear, about 10,000 young people, including my brother, who was just 16, and Anne's older sister Margot, and many, many of their friends, and older kids as well. Even young men from 20, 22, got a call-up notice to be deported to Germany to work in German factories. Well, at that time we had heard of already concentration camp and death camps, and as well many, many people who had been left behind in Austria from our family. First we had got letters, so we were first transported to Polish ghettos, lots for instance, and we still got some letters from them, and then it stopped. So usually refugee parents were very, very suspicious of why they invite now the Jewish children to come back to Germany. So one evening, it took a week till they were to report to the certain office. So my father called us together and said, Heinz, you are not going, we are going to go into hiding.